Welcome to the NEPA Scene Podcast. We're coming to you live from Cole Creative in downtown Wilkes-Barre. I'm Rich Howells. I'm the founder and editor of NEPA Scene.
I'm John Popko from Time Shamrock Communications and Radio for Rock 107, Alt 92.1, and ESPN Radio. And I also am the Saturday night host of Alt Natives on Alt 92.1, where I play an hour of local music. So if you're in a band, send us your stuff, altnatives at alt921.com.
And we're here with haunted attraction reviewer and founder of Electroshock Entertainment, Joe Rovinsky. He's also a contributor to Blumhouse and Dread Central, and you may have seen some of his haunted reviews on our website as well. So we're going to talk about haunted attractions in the area. Which ones should you go to? Which ones maybe aren't as good? So we're going to talk about what makes a good or bad attraction. Some scary encounters he's had and some fun stories of reviewing this stuff over the years. The haunt industry in general, because it has become an industry at this point. You see these things popping up all over the place. The best way to spend your holiday weekend with Halloween coming up, and more. So join our conversation. If you have any questions or comments for us, anything you'd like to talk about, anything you'd like to plug or mention, maybe talk about your own experiences at haunted attractions in the area, just leave them right down below in the comments, and we'll get to those later on in the show. But first, we have some beer to drink.
He looks scared.
That's why I taste this fine beer. So.
This guy's had a long day, and I think we have too. Obviously, we're a little bit later today. We all kind of had crazy stuff going on today, so we're all running a little bit behind. So we're going to unwind with these fine pumpkin beers, which are all holiday themed in a sense.
Yeah, all pumpkin beers from Beer Boys on North Washington Street. We have the Founders Sumatra Mountain through a Randall of smoked pumpkin.
Now that's another one that you can only get at Beer Boys.
At Beer Boys because of the Randall, the infusion.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So yeah, he keeps having fun with that stuff. So Epic Imperial Pumpkin Porter, 8% on that one. And the last one is the Penn Pumpkin Roll, which is 6%. Which and I don't know about you guys, but whenever I drink pumpkin beers, I don't know if it's the nutmeg or what, but after I drink 2 or 3, I feel like I'm outside of my body, looking down on my real body, like a soul that left the body, looking down on myself, and being like, "Don't do this, do that." Like, but
maybe that's part of the whole season, you know.
I don't know, but maybe that's
the Halloween spirit.
Yes, sure. So,
all right. So, which one are we going to go with first?
Should we start with the higher one first?
Yeah, and work our way down?
Yeah.
Tier down, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
So that's the Founders Sumatra Mountain through a Randall of smoked pumpkin.
Okay.
Sounds pretty interesting.
Sounds like we're getting an echo over there.
I think Gerard's watching fighter pilots.
Oh, okay.
Or he's got a CB radio or some kind of scanner back there, and he's following the cops. I don't know.
Well, while we're popping those open, obviously we want to give a shout-out to one of our other sponsors, which is the Keys in downtown Scranton. This Friday, they have the Kids on Bikes Halloween party. So if you're not familiar, Kids on Bikes was a band that was very good. They played around here for many years. They broke up a couple of years ago, went their separate ways, moved out of state, that kind of thing. They're getting back together just for this weekend. So if you missed them before, or if you miss going to their shows, definitely go to Friday night show. And on Saturday is a Halloween Spooktacular featuring Down to 6, Pity Party, Permanence, Black Hole Heart, and University Drive, which, if you know anything about local music, you know that that's an excellent lineup that you absolutely should not miss. We've covered many of those bands on the site before. We've definitely covered them at the Keys before too. But that's a really cool lineup. It seems like a good way to spend your Halloween weekend. So if you're not going to the haunted attractions that we're talking about, or maybe you go to those first and then go unwind at the Keys after, that is Saturday night. And then we also want to give a shout out to the FM Kirby Center, who is also one of our sponsors. Now, I am wearing the Evil Dead shirt. That is not a coincidence. Evil Dead the Musical is going to be on October 30th, which is this Monday, which I'm very, very excited about. And on a personal note, my wife was going to get me tickets for my birthday, and the Kirby Center insisted on giving us splash zone seats. So if you know anything about this show, it's just like the Evil Dead movies, except there's music, but there's going to be tons of gore and blood and stuff like that shooting out into the audience. So you got to wear a poncho or something like that, unless you want to get your clothes all covered and that kind of thing. So I will definitely be in one of those front row seats getting covered in gore on Monday, which is going to be awesome. So you can look for coverage of that later this week. And or later next week, rather. And the Bleachers show, which we definitely wanted to talk about, that's on November 2nd. And so that's coming up this Thursday. And if you keep watching our Facebook page, we will be giving away tickets to that show. We'll have a couple giveaways throughout the week, and possibly we might be able to give them out next week at our open mic event. So if you were at our open mic this week, we were giving away 311 tickets. This coming week, we might be able to give Bleachers tickets away. So we'll see. But I know we'll definitely have a giveaway on our Facebook page. So keep a lookout for that in the next day or so. It's one of those share sort of things. So if you really want to go to that, you might get your chance to go for free. But
I'll be there.
You guys are involved with that.
Yeah, it's Alt 92.1 show partnered with Live Nation in the Kirby Center. Should be a good show. I'm excited. I have a baby appointment prior to the show, so hopefully that will go quickly and we can make it in time. But if not, such is life.
Right.
But speaking of babies, I want to give a quick shout out to my wife. Remember, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about a new phone.
Yeah.
And all of our friends on our award-winning viewers were pushing for my wife to get a new phone for me. She did. My birthday is next Wednesday. She bought me a new phone. She gave it to me early because she didn't have a choice, because Verizon started texting me messages saying, thanks for your in-store pickup.
Yeah.
Thanks for this. You have this now. And I'm like, why are we getting these messages? And she's like, those fuckers. So I got my present a week early. So what I think we should do is we should try and convince her to do other things. So
yes.
Yeah, be respectful. She is pregnant and she is my wife and I love her. So, but feel free to tell her things she should do.
Make some other fine suggestions.
I mean, obviously it worked last time, so we should keep up with that. So
right.
I like Red Sox stuff. I'm a Celtics fan. What else? I don't know.
Your comments matter, obviously.
Yeah,
make an impact in some form or another, even if it's just to get this guy a new phone.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda.
And we also want to shout out to Loyalty Barbershop and Shave Parlor. They have locations in Scranton, Archibald, and a new shop in Wilkes-Barre on South Main Street. So if you need a haircut, they're the place to go. This guy gets his haircuts there.
And if you were a regular at the Archibald shop, Lindsay's last day, I think, is Friday.
Oh, really?
She is going to move on from the barber industry and focus her time on being a full-time mother.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah, good for her. Yeah,
definitely. All right. So, we want to...
I'm drying up over here.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell that, you can taste that smokiness.
Yeah.
And the smoked pumpkin, yeah.
It smells like a bonfire. It smells like fall.
Yeah.
This is
perfect. 9%, can't beat it.
It's a 9%, but it doesn't taste like a 9%. It's got a little alcohol heat.
It could be dangerous.
Yeah, like it's definitely got the heat there, but not necessarily overpowering or anything.
I'm glad I gave you guys the bigger cups. Solely on the ABV, not because it's not good.
Yeah, we're going to be...
getting weird.
Definitely going to be a little toasty as the night goes on.
I'm sweating already.
All right. Oh, and And Katie Evans wished me a happy birthday. Thank you very much.
When is your birthday?
My
Is it
birthday
today?
is Friday.
Friday, okay.
And if you saw our open mic stream last night, or if you were there, the wonderful attendees of our open mic gave me an awesome cake that had an NEPA Scene logo on it. It was shaped like a keystone. It was actually a really, really nice cake. And they have put together a fundraiser for NEPA Scene in December at the Backyard Ale House. We'll obviously have more information on that as it goes, but I'm actually not involved. It's an NEPA Scene event, and I have not organized it. I will not be hosting it. You don't have to see me stumble through trying to host it or anything like that, which is really nice.
Well, what's really cool, I was on the behind the scenes part of that. Just I chimed in where I could, but I think that goes back to what you said. Like, some days you feel like giving up and throwing in the towel, but there's moments that you experience that you're like, this is why I do it. And I mean, this probably has to be the biggest. I mean, people appreciate what you do so much, they want to do anything that they can to show you that. So that's really cool.
Yeah. It shows that what we do actually means something that is making an impact, which is the whole point. You know, I feel like, you know, I've done a lot of time in media, working for newspapers and magazines and stuff, and sometimes you feel like you're not really reaching people, even though, you know, you have X amount of readers or whatever. You might not get that impact. You might not hear from people, so you don't know. Okay, I see that there's numbers here, but what do they mean? You know, do these people like it? Do they not like it? That kind of thing. It's really cool that we have a very different kind of relationship with our readership, where people actually do respond and they let us know what they like and don't like, and that they want to see us continue and they want to root for us, which is pretty cool.
I mean, they voted as best podcast, so
right.
You know.
So obviously they like this too.
Yeah, I mean, and best publication, is that what?
Yeah.
And best
journalist as well.
Geez.
I know.
The people have spoke.
Can't get better than that. And your wife says, "Don't push your luck, Popko."
Come on. I've got like 9 weeks to get away with murder.
All right, well, let's get into Joe and what you've been up to. So, first of all, let's give a little background on yourself and you know,
well,
how do you get into this?
Back in 2013, I believe, my brother, who is not here today, who goes with me on these reviews, had a great idea of trying to get free tickets to haunted attractions. That's God's honest truth. And
that's how it always starts.
Best thing was to do at the time was to make a Facebook blog and sort of go to haunted attractions and give your feedback. And we did that with one haunted attraction that was locally first, and it was Reaper's Revenge. Okay. And in my opinion at the time, which I was an uneducated customer, just like anybody else who walks, we had some critiques and problems with the haunted attraction itself. And in a very simple 30-word, 50-word, like sort of bullet point review, a week later we get a call from the owner and a Facebook message as well. Could you please come up to Reaper's Revenge? We'd like to show you what's going on. And from that period of time, the owner's Paul Catran. He kind of gave us an inside story as to what is going on that goes into the development of the attraction, as well as a cost, artistic decisions, and the year-round process. And it kind of snowballed from there. So the idea that went from being just sort of a way to sort of get free tickets turned into something almost like a side passion and almost like a side job in a way. Right. And that transitioned into providing. The year later, we started providing reviews for the Electric City at the time, which was called this piece called the Han Spot. And those became a lot more detailed and more professional designed reviews. And Dread Central and later Blumhouse Digital took notice of our work. So really going from a simple Facebook blog, which was read by an owner up in our area, went to a giant kind of writing piece and analytical piece, and now it's to the point where every week we publish articles, visit haunted attractions across the Tri-State area, and I also speak with the owners and the employees of these haunted attractions. I think sometimes these scare actors don't really get recognized for what they do, and at the hard work that they do, especially in a 3-hour span of time. They have to get through maybe 12 wagons, they have to carry chainsaws, they have to entertain people, and the most absurd things possibly you'd ever think of is their life, basically. And sometimes people don't really give the industry as much respect as possible, but they sort of think of it as sort of like a boo, okay, Halloween time, let's go to Haunted Hayride and see it. In certain places, this is becoming almost like a Hollywood show. Reaper's Revenge, for example, I'll speak to them first, is probably the best haunted attraction of anywhere on this East Coast. And I've been to places that are larger and smaller and promoted on websites. and they have a fantastic system in place, and that's a year-round operation. They don't stop building, they don't stop training actors, and there's 120 or so actors on that mountain every single night who are committed to giving every single person the best show possible. So getting into it, first of all, was really just kind of a dumb luck, and at the time there wasn't many so-called hot reviewers, and it really became, it picked up recently where people tried to use that kind of term to get free passes or get into whatever you want to call that portion of the industry, and we kind of sort of moved into a sort of try to work with the haunts themselves and try to become more partners with them, and even not charge money, but try to get them a chance to promote their people that work there and the quality of their show, and sort of get them shine light on those people who maybe dress up as a zombie or dress up as Michael Myers. There's real people behind those masks, and those people actually take passion in what they do.
Sure.
About 2 weeks ago, I was at Reaper's Revenge, for example, and they have what's called a bonfire the other night. So at 4 o'clock in the morning or so, all the actors who want to stay will stand around and they'll critique the show with their managers. There's Kelly, there's Michael Bellardi, there's Paul, there's Mike Hefner. All these managers stay and they sort of critique the show. And some of these actors take their role so seriously, they'll pitch ideas. There was a person, I'll never forget this now, that actually pitched the idea of being more of an aggressive Reaper and wanted to get that idea to the owner, almost like that was his part of the show, and he wanted to sort of express that. And that was very passionate. He was very passionate about it. So it's been a very eye-opening experience, and I think some people need to sort of look behind the idea of just a haunted attraction or a haunted hayride and see the number of people that are going to these attractions, especially in our area. We have some of the best probably around. And I've traveled practically everywhere. I've seen many haunted attractions that have been reviewed on sites like BuzzFeed and all these other, I call sometimes fake sites. They're just promoted, but we have the best probably, especially in the Northeast of Scranton, Pennsylvania area. We have the best here we can go to, and Lehigh area. If you're a fan of more of extreme haunted attractions, we have one an hour and a half in Palmerton, Pennsylvania, which is more of an adult-themed, mature haunted attraction, where there is cursing, there is sexual themes, there is violence, and you will have to sort of, it's not a haunted house for children. It's called the Halls of Horror. It's in Palmerton, Pennsylvania. It is probably the best experience you'll ever have if you're an adult. It's psychologically, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. We have Reaper's Revenge, which really is the king up here. Plus we have the old school attractions that people have always gone to, such as Dracula's Forest, the horror halls, things that people have done for generations. Sometimes you don't look back and appreciate until you go see other places.
Right.
Or, look at the rich history we have in our area with haunted attractions. People still talk about, for example, the Bald Mountain Hayride, which has been defunct since 2001, but it's still on people's memories if you go to these places. So I think the Northeast Pennsylvania sometimes has to look back at this industry and say, well, we have a great big impact. Based on information, Pennsylvania has some of the highest. I think we have 130 haunted attractions in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Which is one of the highest in the United States. So it is a booming industry in the area. Plus, right down the road, Philadelphia, you have Terror Behind the Walls, the Eastern State Penitentiary, Penhurst Asylum, Bates Motel. This area here is a focal point for the haunted industry, and it's starting to really grow. And it's in some places it's booming. There's lines. 6 people wait 6 hours sometimes to get on a haunted hayride, and I think sometimes people trivialize that and think that is silly. But I think it's a very powerful form of art, and there's people that really take their role seriously in either providing a good show, their acting performances, or simply the operations standpoint of a haunted attraction. That goes throughout the year. It doesn't stop in October, November. It goes in January, February, March, April, right until the next year. These people live for the show, and I think that needs to be sometimes highlighted more than it already is.
Now, is there, you mentioned how many there are in this area and in Pennsylvania. Do you have any insight as to why here? Why is it so big here as opposed to other
That's
areas?
a great question. I don't exactly understand why. I think it's because of the. I think haunted attractions sometimes allow people to sort of escape from reality, and also let them sort of. I think we have a passionate art base that sometimes is forgotten about, and horror is sometimes art. And there's a lot of art and thought that goes into the design of these attractions. I'll go back to I mentioned a place called the Halls of Horror in Palmerton. It's considered to be an extreme haunt, and there's blood, and you have to sort of willingly give yourself up to whatever they're going to do to you, which is called a blood experience. It's harmless, basically. You just end up getting covered in fake blood. But there's a psychological thought based into the design of the attraction, whether it be through lighting and what you're going to experience with the characters that you see. Even when it goes to the more generic haunted attractions or the classical ones like Dracula's Forest, even, it plays in the phobias of people, like clowns, for example, and the fear of darkness and what people don't see. And I think that sometimes that appeals to this area for some reason. And I know in certain cases some haunted attractions are starting to top off. They've reached their point where they've marketed to the area, they're attracting people from across the country. They're looking for ways to expand now. I know Reaper's Revenge is extremely popular. and they still want people to come into the area to see their show, and they're actually being featured on a national basis next week. What's called November 9th, I believe. It's called Legendary Haunt Tour, and that's a major industry event where haunt owners from across the country will be coming to this area to see Reaper's Revenge on a private event basis, and that goes to Field of Screams, which is in Mountville, Pennsylvania, which is about 2.5 hours from here. Then the famous Bates Motel, which has been around since 1990s. I believe 27 years it's been around, and
Wow.
that's the king kind of in terms of on this area. But it seems that Pennsylvania has always kind of been the haunt central, even from back in the early 90s, and it's kind of picked up from there. Some places have closed, some places have expanded, and in this area here we have a lot of traditional charity haunts like Horror Hall, and which does a great job with what they do. And we've been to many charity haunts, and one of the big pet peeves is sometimes charity haunts don't really take themselves seriously, but Horror Hall does.
Yeah.
And they do present a good show for people that it was worth their money.
Yeah.
And I also think that I don't really understand why this is always the case, but it seems like this area has always taken Halloween as something that it's embraced in terms of seasons. And we had the NEPA Horror Film Fest
Right.
2 weeks ago, and that was also a very popular event. And again, that's just because I think people like the horror in this area for some reason or other. And then I think you'd have to go into more deeper character study of the area to see why, but I don't know why. But it's been very popular in this area here.
We had a good question. George Palamides, who actually comes to our open mics, you might have seen him on there. Do you think McCamey Manor? I don't know what that goes too far.
Well, McCamey Manor currently does not exist in what is presented.
Okay.
There is no formal McCamey Manor anymore. There has not been since 2014.
Okay.
What Russ McCamey and McCamey Manor runs is they run their own separate shows.
Oh, okay.
They also co-sponsor with shows in, for example, New Jersey. Actually, last year, New Jersey, a place we've visited multiple times, called the Haunted Scare House. The ran was called Dystopia, and that was marketed as McCamey Manor presents Dystopia. So Russ McCamey and McCamey Manor sort of has become his own brand, and he still operates some shows that are almost private tours in Nashville, but he's no longer located in California. And most people still believe that McCamey Manor is still the extreme haunted house that is in California.
Oh, okay.
And that has not been since 2014. He actually left California. He's now located in the Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. And he has run shows where he partners with other haunted attractions and sort of brands himself as McCamey Manor Presents. And there are extreme shows, and there is a lot of smoke and mirrors sometimes involved in those shows that people see online. He's a great showman. Obviously, the person has made himself known still, even though he doesn't really functionally own a haunted house per se anymore. And knowing people that he has worked with in the New Jersey area, they say he is a great character and a great showman, and he does present the idea of a scary, intense, extreme haunted attraction. And he makes what's called his videos or his movies. And some of that stuff sometimes, again, if you step back from a second, you realize there is a little bit of, without getting into too deep, it's more or less, not fake, but it's sort of, there is a little bit of smoke and mirrors going on in what you're seeing.
Okay.
And I know the recent was a movie released called Haunters, which was done, was released Blu-ray and DVD this past, actually 2 weeks ago, about a month ago. That movie is something we reviewed, and that movie was actually filmed back in 2014, and it presents McCamey Manor as it is today, and actually as it was back then. Actually, excuse me, where it was at a house in California, and it was the extreme horror people went through. That doesn't exist anymore. It has not existed in at least 3 years. But he does partner with haunted attractions, and people have said he does a great job of marketing and creating his brand, and presenting himself sort of as the main villain or character in the story. So for those who see these BuzzFeed stories or anything else, the most extreme haunted attraction McCamey Manor in California, they have to sort of look more into what McCamey Manor currently is. He does run his immersive extreme shows, and there's a lot of people doing that right now. There's places in New York doing that. There's places even down in Palmerton, Pennsylvania, which are considered to be more of extreme immersive haunts. So it's not just what he is doing, but sort of the way he presented himself. And I think he's built himself a fantastic brand, and I think over the years you'll see him sort of grow his name as a character and sort of attach himself to other haunted attractions who want to be labeled as McCamey Manor presents this. And I know that happened last year and the year before, which are two haunts in New Jersey. And they both said it was extremely successful events. I think people want to sort of feel, those who are looking for a more mature scare want to feel those. They are in a horror movie, but it's controlled.
Right.
Going through haunted attractions, sometimes you just, might get jump scares or here and there. And it's really kind of just tough to, especially for those who have been through many haunted attractions, those who are not really adult-like. They want to see something more that they actually feel a part of the show. And these immersive horror experiences do focus on the person as the central piece of the show. On the flip side, they can only handle so many people per night.
Right.
So not as profitable in terms of business-wise as perhaps a larger scale haunted attraction. You can't pump in 600 people one night versus 30 and try to present a two-person, one-person show where, yes, you may get bound, and yes, you may have what's simulated, sometimes simulated waterboarding, and there's some other crazy things have happened. You may get pushed against walls. It's physical, it's psychological, and what I think the most scary part is you're giving yourself to somebody else. You cannot fight back. You can't touch, you can't hit, and that's the power of being controlled by something else and not knowing what's going to happen to you. And I think that some people are looking for that for some reason. Again, I don't prescribe to those who really like to get assaulted or beat up in attractions, or that's not my game. I don't like to do that myself. But I think a lot of stuff people see sometimes in the internet still is from the past, and also just good marketing, extremely good marketing that really captures the attention of people, even to this day, even though the functional game manor itself doesn't exist anymore in California.
It seems to be there's a lot of commercialization of this stuff now, too. I mean, you see there's a Walking Dead version somewhere. I think it's in California.
Yeah, there's also some attractions are trying to partner up with movie studios, and it has.
Right.
I know there's a place in New Jersey called the Brighton Asylum, and also in Philadelphia called Fright Factory. Like for example, when Annabelle came out, or James Franco actually went to the Brighton Asylum. That was publicized. So there was some kind of, and also when the Fright Factory, they had Annabelle and also the Conjuring franchise advertised within the haunt itself. This year, Fright Factory used official advertising from It. So they had just like the characterization that's officially licensed by the movie, not just someone throwing a Michael Myers mask on, and trying to tie that in with the actual franchise itself. So I think that is happening. This area here, I don't think we really tapped into that kind of commercialization with movie-wise.
Right.
But there's massive haunted attractions that are, movies companies are trying to look out into how can we get our brand. I know years ago back, Eli Roth has haunted attraction back in Las Vegas, which was the Goratorium. He was the director of the goodness great, I can't remember right now. The torture movie where Hostel. Yes, yeah. Hostel, yes. Yeah, yeah. And that was a roughly 15-minute attraction in Las Vegas on the Strip, and it was really well done. I really enjoyed it, but didn't make any money on the Strip. But it was, again, he was trying to tie his brand into the haunted attraction industry. So
sure.
I know the Scare House in Pittsburgh has partnered with Legendary Films in the past, and they marketed Krampus, for example, when that came out, I think 2 years ago. It was last year or the year before.
Yeah, I think.
And they had an officially licensed attraction based, or Trick or Treat they also had as well. And I know Universal Studios is extremely overly licensed about everything.
Sure.
So there is money to be made in terms of trying to bring the movies into the haunted attractions themselves. And that's happening more and more as movies are starting to, these companies are trying to see, well, now here's a good target audience.
Right.
And can we get them into see our movie versus going to their haunt once in a while, or at least co-brand in that case.
Any of the ones that you saw this year, was there any influence from that kind of stuff? Like It, for example, It was like obviously the big movie this year.
Now locally, there was a play, the Fear Hollow, which is actually in Mountaintop, did have a scene that was a tribute to it, I would say. One of the smaller attractions, believe it or not, there's this attraction called Massacre Mansion, which is in West Scranton.
Yeah.
And it's only a $10 attraction, and it looks like it's an old fun house. And I think some people downplay it based on how it looks from the outside and think it's short.
Sure. The
thing is extremely well done. It's actually, if you walk back into a 1960s or 70s haunted attraction, a throwback, it is exactly the same. Josh Rodney, the owner, purchased it and rehabbed the whole out of passion, just for no money. Him and his brother basically just try to rehab his place, bring it back to life, and build onto it with the trailers. And there's a scene that actually mimics when it's looking out. You see Georgie, and you'll see it. There's a balloon, and it looks like for a moment that it is from the movie. It is a little tiny haunted attraction that is basically cooperates as a fundraiser for the West Grand Little League. It is extremely well done, and plus it does tie in with the classical haunts, and that's one of the styles people sometimes look for, sort of like the throwback haunts that actually the fun houses and things like that you don't really see much anymore on a national scale. Also, a place in New York, which is actually about an hour and a half from Scranton, there's a place called Pure Terror Scream Park, which it's called Legends of Horror House. And that's, again, you'll see it, and it has its 3 doors from the movie, and you can sort of see the scene reenacted you right in the front of your face. They've really stayed away from that movie for some reason. I think that's because I think a lot of haunted owners see that as sort of like an adventure movie, where not much of a horror movie, where the kids were sort of banding together against a common enemy versus this creature's not like Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger. But there seems to be a push now for the classical movie monsters coming back into haunted attractions, and especially with next year's release of Halloween, that the new Halloween movie comes out next year from Blumhouse. That's another character I think that sort of has shelf life again. And I think Freddy Krueger has really popped up. That sounds ridiculous even talking about this thing. A guy with Freddy Krueger is actually really entertaining. But you see a person with medals and cursing at you or saying, "You're going to die, bitch." It's a little bit of a different story when you realize, okay, that's Freddy Krueger. You are a grown person looking at that. And that's sort of creeping back into these even mainstream haunts, the classical horror or iconic villains that have appeared in forever. I know Reaper's Revenge has a lot of haunts seem to like the Ring Girl still.
Right.
I think it was Samar, her name is. I believe her name is. And I'm not a big fan of the franchise myself, but there is a sort of a blending between unique creative concepts and movie concepts that are sort of joined together. And there's also the traditional haunts that someone will dress as Michael Myers, or someone will throw some kind of random mask on, and there's no kind of style or characterization. So that's what usually you see in these haunted attractions.
Now, what do you think makes a good haunted attraction?
Well, first of all, there's different styles of haunted attractions. If you're looking at a place, for example, I look at going, a lot of things are very difficult. When you see so many places, it's difficult to even get any kind of response. So first I look at walking to haunted attractions, how professionally is the place run? I don't care if it is a charity haunt or a small-time haunt or a mainstream haunt. If I'm there, there's people older than me, there's people that they deserve the best show possible. If they're paying $25, $35, or even more to see their show. Sure. If they're on if actors are on their cell phones, or if there's a lack of line management, that bothers me. If someone is in the woods playing a character and they're on their cell phone, even if it may sound ridiculous again for those who don't want to spend this kind of money, but it takes away from the whole show. Even if I'm not scared, at least try to present yourself in a manner that's professional. Also, there has to be an idea of what you're going into. If you're going to a haunted attraction, for example, this weekend, and expect a short line, that's a lack of common sense, I believe. It really is. And people sometimes leave the reviews based on how long the line is.
Yeah, I've seen that.
In terms of, I'll speak to get some of these haunted attractions. A lot of these haunted attractions are Reaper's Revenge, for example, is timed to the T. They have 12 wagons running, and every single thing is timed. And they get as much people as possible without ruining the show, because you don't want to walk what's called a conga line or a bottleneck through a haunted attraction. You don't see the show. They try to separate as much as possible.
Sure, yeah, you don't want to see the wagon in front of
you.
you.
You don't want to see the people in front of you. You get off the wagon and start walking. And sometimes it does happen. Based on the track, like for example, you go tear by the walls of Philadelphia, that's going to happen based on the number of people. They can't really control that. There's so many people that enter the attraction one time, they just basically have to let them in, and you see actors, and they'll try to reset their scene and hope for the best, basically.
Sure.
But then the people go on social media and Facebook, and they'll say, well, line was 3 hours long, or had to upgrade to VIP for $70-some. Well, that's the decision you have to make based on the night you're going and the attraction you're going to. And if you really want a quality show, and if you want, depending on what you believe is quality, some people are more scared of other things than others. But I try to look at how the attraction presents itself professionally, if they take stock in how they execute their show, and if there is professionalism in terms of their line management. And that's the first thing that stands out to me anymore. Because visiting some of the hot attractions, you stand around and it's pure chaos. Other places is very, very efficient. Even maybe long of a wait, at least you know that there is a method to the madness, I guess you could say. Also, I think it's important to look at not really acting, but looking at the quality of the entire show. If you have actors who are seasoned actors who take their craft seriously, you may have some first-year actors or sometimes teens or volunteers that may not be, sort of, and they may sort of stare at you from time to time. Yeah. So you got to take into account that it is a Halloween show and it is a haunted attraction. You have to sort of give leeway to everything. But if there's a concerted effort that there is, not just somebody guy wearing a mask with a hoodie on, that there is a thought that goes into the planning of each scene that you're seeing. I also think it's important to look at haunted attractions is they're giving you what you want. You want a family-friendly haunt, for example, there's places that will do that for you. If you're looking as an adult and mature, there's places around here that will do that for you as well. And you got to make decisions based on your own interest and background. I'll go back to the example of Halls of Horror again. If they clearly advertise that this is not for children. This is for adults, and some children do go through it. Some teens do. They love it. They actually love getting covered in fake blood and getting all the experience of a horror movie. But at the same time, they know what's going to happen to them, and they're told. So they have to make an educated decision. This is not for me. Or they'll run out the door, and that's it. Same thing with, like, for example, if you go to a Dracula's Forest, a traditional haunt, you got to understand what you're getting into before you get into it. Right. You show up at a door somewhere and say, okay, here's a haunted house. They're all different anymore. And it's really, they're all presenting a more diverse, unique experience. There's also haunts that try to cater to everybody. For example, in this area, I was focused on this area here, we have Horror Hall, which has basically something for everybody. Or Dracula's Forest, or if you're Hall up the road, or Broken Hearts Asylum, which recently opened up again at the Dallas Fairgrounds, which is, it tries to cater to something for everybody. the adults, the children, and the teens in a manner that is, again, it's a quality show. So it's very pinpointing what makes it so excellent is difficult based on what you think, and opinion-wise.
Sure.
Anybody walking on track says this sucks. It was just boring or something stupid happened. They don't really understand sometimes why.
Yeah.
It's best sometimes when we review attractions to sort of figure out what happened. If there's lack of actors, or if there's something animatronic or something broken that happens. That kind of sometimes some stuff is good to know before you go into a place, rather make a judgment. And especially this weekend coming up, where these places are bound to be slammed, it's best to make your best decision, maybe 1 or 2 haunted attractions, and decide where you're going based on. And all these places advertise well; they tell you what they are. And I also think it's important for those who look at haunts that some places do improve. In this area here, we have a place called the Circle of Screams, which is up in Dixon City.
Oh yeah, the
haunted drive-in.
theater.
And 3 years ago, I wouldn't send my worst enemy to that place. It was one of the worst. I'm not joking, and I'm being 100% serious. It was one of the worst places I've ever seen in my entire life. It was poorly run. There was some bizarre character that played Beetlejuice, and it was just an embarrassing show that was actually awkward to see. But they have a great, talented haunt manager now, his name is Lynn Griffin, who really is trying to build a quality show again. Last year, started off using characters like Harley Quinn and Suicide Squad characters, which doesn't really fit in the haunted attraction usually.
Yeah.
But he's actually done a great job of using an actor-driven show to actually bring quality and professionals back to their haunt. So this year, it was absolutely incredible the last 2 years. So things do improve. So if you don't like something one year, there's a good chance, or there's a possibility that next year that show, based on your feedback, will actually improve. And some haunts do take Facebook reviews extremely seriously, and Yelp and Google reviews. And some owners will respond on each one of those, and sometimes the responses are not the most friendly. Sometimes they get things. This is their livelihood.
Yeah, they're taking it personally.
This is a huge investment they make, and they take it personally, and they try to get either positive feedback or what they do, or explain their perspective as to what the reason that their show is lacking in that person's opinion. So that's why I think sometimes identifying haunt attractions based on what's good and what's not is very difficult. It's very subjective, and it depends on what your interests are. If you love Halloween, if you're not afraid of anything, I say by all means go for the most intense experience possible. If you're more of a family-friendly person, then maybe perhaps a more local haunt house that's generalized is probably best for you. And there's the good thing about here is there's so many options. We're in the center of so many options that you could see places that are just everything you possibly want and more.
So really, your advice, if you're looking for something, is to definitely do your research.
Yeah, very simple. A lot of haunt attractions post their, now the season's almost over, but they'll post their calendar and they'll post nights that they predict to have the most busiest nights, for example. Or there's some haunt attractions will tier nights on cost-wise based on their more popularity. Sure. And you can make your decision based on what's based on their websites, or you could, simply a very quick research. You can tell, is this for me or is this not for me? And these haunt attractions aren't trying to trick people. They're telling you what you're going to see. There really has not been any haunt attractions in this 2-hour radius that has tried to trick people to get them in their doors. They present themselves as what they are. And with a quick click of Facebook or any kind of review or any kind of newspaper article, you could ascertain whether or not this haunt attraction is a professionally run show or something that maybe perhaps needs work for next year, or something you probably should not spend your $35, $45, $25, or in some cases $70 and above dollars on. And also be aware this weekend is going to be beyond jam-packed.
Yeah.
Even like last weekend.
Sure.
And some of these places are open next weekend. They're open the first week of November. And that's sometimes a good time to visit after the Halloween's over, because the crowds plummet. And then you get a more immersive or more interactive show, and perhaps it's a better value for some people.
Sure.
But if you have a family of 4 or something like that, you may have to make a decision what each one wants to do versus going to haunt and saying, either this sucks or this is not for me or any of that nature. So it's really, in terms of reviewing, it's difficult to sort of identify, pinpoint what's good for everybody, because there's so many differences in terms of what's being presented.
Right. Like as a reviewer, I'd imagine you have to really think about what a general audience is going to
that's a great point.
Like.
Sitting on hayrides, for example, and trying to understand what the person next to you is thinking, or what works and doesn't work, and try, like, for example, I've seen some of these places so many times, I kind of know what to expect, but I'm getting to see what the person across from me thinks, or their response is feedback I can give to the management and the ownership staff, or my review. And what I'm saying for it comes from my personal opinion of doing this since 2013 now, and sometimes I have to sort of filter myself based on what the general public thinks. There may be something I may think is totally ridiculous and stupid, but there's people on the wagon who are freaked out, or they're laughing, and they're getting some kind of reaction. So I sort of have to sort of not really censor myself, but sort of take myself back from that opinion.
Right.
Also, the flip side, sometimes I'll see something I truly love, but other people, the wagon seems like they're not. And I give my opinion, and then that something gets changed. Or that's just give an example. Sometimes trying to see people's reactions, I think, has been a really great thing that I've done, especially going to most of these places many times. I focus more on what people around me sort of do.
Right.
And I try to avoid the teeny boppers of the world sometimes. They sort of, everything can scare them.
Right.
A person with a mask could run around and scare them. But seeing what the adults sometimes in the wagon think they're funny. Because a lot of attractions don't have to be sort of scary. They can be funny. They can be entertaining. There's people, they could watch someone dance to Thriller. They could, have there's humor in haunts. Just like you mentioned,
as there would be in
like the Evil
movies.
Dead, for example, is in the great television Ash for Evil Dead, which is hopefully will last for the next 2 more years. But
that show's really good.
And it's in danger of being disappearing, which unfortunately is not good.
That is very unfortunate.
There's humor in horror sometimes.
Sure.
But seeing other people's reactions is great. And sometimes, and a lot of haunt owners will go to the haunt and we'll see what's going on with the actors. And I've seen haunt owners that actually disguise themselves and try. Usually they're terrible disguises, but they like to see what the actors are doing and see what the customers react to the best. And that kind of guides them in terms of their story development throughout the year. And most attractions I do think improve throughout the years. There's bad feedback on something early on. It may not be much to justify a repeat visit, but from a showmanship standpoint, it has improved based on the feedback of either the actors themselves, the managers, or the customers who may say something. So seeing the other people around you is sometimes the most important part in terms of reviewing or trying to discuss or provide content for horror haunt owners, because you want to see what their perspective is, the general public.
Sure.
And try to avoid the general, anybody will run from anything type people. And sometimes people don't like hearing some of the answers you have to say. Yeah. There's debates that are had about certain things and philosophies of what either you're scary or funny or what's happening on a scene itself. But there's always serious discussions, a lot, especially those who really take their business extremely seriously and see it as their livelihood. Those who see it as a hobby, well, it is what it is.
Sure.
And that's really how I've seen it in terms of, especially visiting. I've kind of visited all these places multiple times at this point, so I kind of know what to expect no matter what. So. Sure.
You had mentioned, actors getting training. What does that kind of look like?
I will speak for what I know in terms of the certain places that do a full-fledged program. Reaper's Revenge, for example, has summer events throughout the summer events where they have almost like an actor training camp where they'll meet with their management staff and their supervisors, and they will do what's called actor training, which means how to use their words and how to use their actions with people to go beyond the simple, if I jump out in front of you with a mask and stare at you, what do you do next? Or saying something bizarre like, okay, well, you're going to die. And someone will say, well, no, you're not. Well, then how do you get any kind of reaction? And I think sometimes Reaper's Revenge spends a ton of time in trying to get their actor team to go beyond the typical boo scare, which is a jump scare. They have after camps throughout the summer. I believe they have bonfire, they have pizza. They try to take people who are coming into the sort of get them to understand what their character actually is. Even when they have their meeting at the end of the night, there's each scene takes themselves very seriously. They have awards the night based on the best, scariest, or their most improved scene, or whatever you want to call it. And for example, if you have someone, there's people who carry chainsaws and run a wagon, scare people with chainsaws, who take their performance and how they get reactions from people beyond seriously. So actor training is basically focused on trying to get those people to believe in the character that they are, and also remember that they have to maintain professionalism. And that's a huge thing in haunt attractions. You may have someone come up to you and say something inappropriate, or someone who doesn't get a scare, or someone who tries to mess with actors. And if an untrained actor or someone who doesn't understand how to respond to that may result in responding to their most common response, or break character, or be unprofessional, or even worse. So I know there's getting people involved in the process itself and believing in what they're doing, even if it's the smallest role, if it's playing a zombie with something coming out of their mouth. There's the people, they take pride in what they do, and that's a big part of the actor training program that Reaper's Revenge has, and it's very theatrical. I know Gravestone Manor up the road from here is very theatrical haunt. That's like watching a living show when you walk through scene to scene. It's not the most scariest for those who've gone to haunts, but it's a great engaging show, and they take great pride in their ability to act out scenes and present a show for people. And I'm not exactly sure what their actor training programs, but I know, for example, Reaper's Revenge throughout the year has a variety of events where those who want to work the current haunt that year on a voluntary basis, they get a lot of people to go up to their training programs, and based on their characters and what they want to do, and some of those characters move on to supervisors. One guy who played again, this sounds totally ridiculous saying a lot, but there's some guy who played the Reaper years ago back at the end, became a haunt supervisor. And his role back then was just to be the Reaper. And he shook the wagon and he went crazy. And for some reason, in a review I put down he wasn't aggressive enough. He took it personally that year. His name was Matt. He a good guy. But he took it personally that his performance was not to par, and it bothered him. And he had the copy of Electric City in his back of his car, and that year. But
that's what makes it better, though.
he took it personally that his role basically is to be the Reaper, but now he's a supervisor and he's in charge of the hayride. So the Reaper's Revenge tries to funnel people in, get them into positions of management, and sort of continuously build the staff of people. That happens at a lot of haunt attractions. They're bigger and smaller. But Base Motel in the Philadelphia area and Terror Behind the Walls take a lot of great pride in trying to present a show that's theatrical, but at the same time tries to recognize the limitations of what they have to work with sometimes. You may have volunteers one night, or younger actors, teens in some cases, or people who their lives they really enjoy the aspect of scaring. That's kind of their escape for the year, and that's what they live for. Hotel Horror in the Pocono Mountains area, it's in Saylorsburg, is a very actor-driven haunt. And there's actors that actually come up with their own horror movie characters. They customize their own characters every single season. And they have elaborate makeup, and they have elaborate set designs. But these designs are basically come from their mind. And the management team sort of helps them bring that out in them. And there's a certain person, for example, he played a role. Last year he played a role. He was called a kabuki character. We had a Japanese war paint on. This year he was called a Dutchman, and it was almost like a take on an evil Amish person, where they had it was a phenomenal, creepy character, but it came from his mind, and he was allowed to sort of play that role out. And that's in some places that rely on actor-driven haunts versus, if you go to, like, for example, Dracula's Forest, you may see a lot less of that. For example, you may see some people. There's still a great hayride. That's more traditional in design, where you'll see the clowns in the woods and people in masks, and not much actual acting going on or any interactions that go beyond the general, what I call boo or jump scare. It's a very bizarre. A great story to share is this is a 100% true story. There's a haunted attraction I won't name. They had hired a person. I'll use this. I'm not sure what the correct PC term is, but they're a little person to play the role of Chucky. And this person did a great job as the role of Chucky. They were, and this is a 100% true story. However, though, people were calling the person a midget when they were walking through, and teens were insulting him. So the haunt owner actually tried to increase the person's salary, tried to come to some kind of negotiation as to how we can keep this Chucky in the scene. It sounds absurd, but it got to the point where he actually ran out of the haunted attraction. Was so mad that he was being disrespected by what we called the midget by other guests walking through, that the owner actually tried to chase Chucky down. So it got worse from there. Once he quit the haunted attraction, I guess he contacted whatever advocacy group that represented him, and the haunt was bombarded by people who were little people, or I'm not sure what the PC term is anymore. I'll say dwarf for now. I'm not sure it's incorrect. They bombarded the haunt with negative reviews and hate based on the treatment of Chucky. Oh, and that sounds totally ridiculous and absurd, but it happened to the guy, and that kind of stuff you can't really make up sometimes because it's the absurdity of the haunt industry. You're trying to chase down a Chucky doll,
right,
and then have his friends come and his group come and harass you because you didn't treat him correctly. But I was told he was the best treated actor on campus. He was given his own area, and everything because they loved him because they thought it was great.
Yeah. He
fit the character perfectly, and they thought he was a great actor, but he just didn't want to hear it. It just caused a absurd reaction, and that happened. For that story last year, and that was one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard, of chasing a Chucky around the street.
Now, is there anything that scares you personally? Is there something that got to you at any of these?
Yeah, sometimes if you look at places that are more sensory based, or more, if you go into darkness and you know what's coming next, that sometimes is the most terrifying thing. I know Reaper's Revenge does a great job at blinding people, and not knowing what's in front of you is the scariest. Or places like House of Horror or Hotel Horror, the more extreme adult haunts, where you're going to a situation where you don't know what to expect. And every single year, a lot of haunts stay generally the same every single year. And despite what people will tell you, haunt industry a lot of times will say, well, in 2018, we'll have this. Or 2019, there's always the future aspect of it.
Sure.
And a lot of the times just kind of, well, it is, yeah, okay, and then it never really happens. But some places like House of Horror, for example, in Palmerton, which is was the review is published on NEPA Scene's page, every single year the story is brand new, different, and it's absolutely absurd. It's an insane place where you don't know what to expect. You walk in there, you're not sure if it's going to be a physical attack that year or more psychological. This year, they tiered on more of the psychological horror, where you're listening to things that perhaps will mess with your mind a little bit more. And you're by yourself, you're isolated, and you kind of sort of at times lose track of this is not reality. This is fake.
Yeah.
In terms of that's what basically the scare that I'm looking for at this point. It really is not about scares, more just enjoying the show at this point for me.
Sure.
And the quality work, and the artistic work, and the hard work that goes into the presentation of all these shows. And in terms of scariest places, that's probably one of the tops. And again, dark, and there's a lot of not seeing what's in front of you, and hearing things, and not knowing what's real and what's not. I think is the most powerful scare. And not these great animatronics or great sets. That's all great. That's good presentation wise, but not the fear of the unknown. Still kind of beats all of that. And sensory based haunts are, in my opinion, I find the most scary. I don't really care about clowns or Michael Myers or anything else running around the woods.
Right.
Or someone telling a little girl, tell me she want to play with me in her doll scene. I kind of rip on that stuff sometimes. I think it's stupid, but other people are freaked out by it. So
sure.
That's just again the general populace and what they believe is scary. And clowns obviously for example, are a very popular thing, and people love being afraid of clowns. But I'd like the sensory-based isolation haunts where you feel as though you are the show. And what's working around you is aimed at scaring you only, and even if that's not the case, they do a great of a job to make you feel that way. And I think that's losing a sense of reality sometimes is the best way to scare.
I'm a big fan of horror movies in general, and yeah, we definitely we should plug this before we get into the next thing. What is this?
The Epic Imperial.
One?
The Epic Imperial Pumpkin Porter, I believe it is.
This
got a little bit of a sweet taste to it, almost.
Yeah, it does, and it's I could taste the carbonation in it a lot more than I can the previous one.
I kind of wish this was the last one.
Yeah.
This is very tasty.
Good.
It's very good, but I think the other one it pales in comparison to that one because of the infusion of the smoked pumpkin.
Yeah.
I think added just something else entirely. This almost tastes like a plain version of what we had before.
Yeah, almost. You're right.
Still good though.
Yeah.
Pretty solid.
Beer Boys on North Washington Street in Wilkes-Barre. 72 beers on tap. Every Wednesday is also glass night, which is pretty neat. They do a featured glass and pint night. And if you get there, sometimes they're gone in a half hour, sometimes they're gone in an hour. But if you get the pint that's on special, you get to keep the pint glass as well, which is pretty neat. Because some of these craft breweries are making some pretty neat artwork, as far as their logo and the design of stuff. So it's pretty neat. So
yeah, that's becoming a whole other thing. We could do a whole podcast on that kind of stuff. When I was saying about horror movies, the more that you're describing the haunted attractions, the more it sounds like horror movies and the industry and what you find that you like and don't like about those too. As a horror fan, I like a lot of classic horror. I like a lot of cheese. You have to know what you're getting into.
Exactly.
Some people are like, oh, I don't like something that's cheesy. I want something that's really scary. But to me, it's like they're all movies. They're not really scary to me per se. So yeah, you like them for different reasons. Like we have a guy Derek who does Cult Corner every week, and which is up on the page right now. It's on the front page, and he reviews different horror movies. And a lot of them are like that classic horror kind of stuff, more for horror fans or people who want to be introduced to that kind of stuff. Like this week, he talked about Demons, and Demons is like a cheesy 80s Italian horror film. And it kind of mixes that Italian horror, which is known for its like horrible gore, along with kind of the cheesiness that you would see in American movies in the 80s, where it was kind of more fun, popcorn movie, a little bit silly, that kind of stuff. And puts those two together, which I think is a lot of fun. But some people watch that and go, "Oh, that's not really my thing." I think people, what you're saying is I think a lot of people will get that same idea from the attraction. Sometimes they go in wanting one thing and might get another, or
go to a place that they know they're going to get a wide variety of everything, a little bit of everything, a little touch of everything. And that again depends on education. If you go to some places are just then they advertise what they are, and in terms of what my likes are, I like I'm with you on that type of style. I like the popcorn Friday the 13th movies, and I love the fan films that have popped up over that franchise. Mm-hmm. Are people like that? Maybe not, because they see it as kind of, there's Jason up there.
Oh yeah. To them, that's not scary.
But they don't really appreciate that. I don't think sometimes there's a lack of. I'm not sure it's cultural. There's lack of, or there's like a disconnect between generations.
Right.
There's those in the 80s,
That's true,
90s,
too.
and they've seen that as that they want that kind of horror back. And there's others who are more like things are more not Scream or something else that I think is absolutely
what they would call torture porn with like Saw, and Hostel, and things like that, where it's just
or something that's more teeny or something totally bizarre. And I think it's goofy. For example, maybe the Scream franchise, for example, or something of that nature, which I really don't think is scary at all.
Right.
I'd rather Jason or some classical character in terms of my movie interest versus or watching an old Salem's Lot or something, or even the old Amityville Horror back in the 70s. Those movies still have a creep factor that lasts till this day. But I don't think that just doesn't connect with some people sometimes.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's cultural or what the reason may be.
Yeah, I think people have to kind of accept not only the tropes but the way that it's made and understand, this was that time, and effects weren't maybe exactly what they are today. But yeah, to me, I watch the modern stuff, and I think it looks just as fake as stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
I think the practical effects look way better, and they age better than a lot of the CG that you see and stuff now. Like, I think that was a big criticism with it when that came out. Is it's good. It's got some creepy moments, but there's so many CG moments where you're just like, oh god, it looks terribly fake.
Yeah,
and those are the most modern effects where they're spending millions of dollars to make that happen. The old movie has its faults, but overall,
that's kind of the same thing that happens on attractions. For example, this past week we went to a place called Bates Motel, which I mentioned previously, which is hugely popular, and they operate every single night of the week. Basically, they open up every night of the week, and the owner Randy Bates is kind of the pioneer of the industry within most places in the area, and they have scenes that are so well done to the point where it's not real. It's almost like going to Disney World.
Right.
If you go to for example, if it's a Jurassic scene, you have massive animatronic dinosaurs, which probably cost a fortune, beyond a fortune, and scenes that look like you're going to like a place that you expect out of Disney World, but you're on a haunted hayride, and you realize that this is more of a show now, not something that really gives you any kind of personal feeling.
Yeah. And
it depends, and that's great. You may enjoy that stuff. You're enjoying the theme of Halloween, the love of, and the amazing visuals you're seeing, but are you getting scared? And again, that depends on the people that get to go see those attractions, what they think and what they believe.
Sure. Well, we should. We actually blew through this episode. We're pretty much at the end. Is there anything else you wanted to get in there before we wrap up?
One thing I heard you say was some of them might push some patrons around and stuff like that. I mean, do you sign a waiver to get into those?
Yes, you are. There's touch haunts.
Because I feel like. These days, you have to, before we even, go to any haunted house.
No, even, for example, some places do have a waiver, and there's
you scared me.
Minimal touch.
I'm offended. You scared me. I can't believe I got scared at this haunted house. I'm suing you.
Well, that's there's one person who told me, one haunted owner, actually was a haunted manager, and he is up in the New York area. He was sued, actually, in court for taking his soul, taking the customer's soul. I thought the guy was bullshitting me. He was not. Someone had tried to file a lawsuit that his soul was stolen as an attraction. That's one of the absurdities sometimes.
That might be the best story I've heard all night.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
That's true. I can talk to guys if we want to sometimes. But a lot of places do have waivers no matter what now.
Yeah.
Because there's touch haunts. Even if you go to some haunts and they just basically touch your hair or they come really close to you, that's considered to be more of a touch haunt.
Sure.
Now, the more extreme immersive places that do physically put their hands on you, and you may get thrown on a bed or put against a wall, or have something that's said to you perhaps that's considered to be not politically correct or sexually offensive to some people. You know what you're doing before you get into that experience. The rules are listed, the experience is listed, and it's trying to, do you accept this or do you not?
Right.
And the places we go to, they are presenting a show that's mature and extreme, but probably the most professional people you'll ever meet, nicest people you'll ever meet. Because everything's controlled at the end of the day. If you say your word, you're done. Or they don't really go that far to the point where you're broken, but they make you think you are. And it's more or less, you definitely have to leave your inhibitions out the door. But you do sign a paperwork saying you agree to this, but they're also not going to hurt you in any way. But it's more or less a mind, messing with someone's mind that really kind of gets them to the point where people do freak out. We see people around the doors. And again, and some people think it's the funnest experience they've ever had in their lives. Because you get for a moment to think that they're in a serious situation they'll never be in, or in a haunted movie or any kind of thing like that. They'll never get to experience that in their life, hopefully, God forbid. But they get to experience something that's surreal. And it goes beyond what society kind of expects, and sometimes it goes beyond what is acceptable in the modern society. But they get to experience something that's different. And I think people kind of like that sometimes, escapism. And again, they are physical, and there's people who sometimes get maybe roughed up or scruffed up if you fall. But there is waivers signed. And I think most haunted attractions are moving towards, no matter what, are having people sign some kind of piece of paperwork in case.
Sure.
And sometimes it gets harder to police that. For example, I can walk in there and sign a haunted attraction. They don't really. Then someone check. I can put my name down as, I don't know, Beetlejuice from the Howard Stern show or something like that, and put my name down there and put that and hand it in, and no one checks it. Then that's another aspect as well. But I think it's just a safety guard. And I know some places are directly more extreme, I guess you could say. They definitely check to see that you are you've.
Well, they have to.
Yes.
Right. It's just kind of the world we live in now.
And at the same time, they definitely do take safety to an extreme level. Every place, especially in Pennsylvania, has to go through extreme inspections. New Jersey, for example, has restrictions on fog. And there's a lot of different things that go. And Dorney Park, for example, believe it or not, which is actually, I failed to mention this, sometimes people think of an amusement park as kind of being kind of a generic Halloween show for everybody. But they have some of the most fantastically designed attractions you could ever see. It's a big budget Cedar Fair funded haunt. And they have scenes which have, in the past have been pretty intense. They have a simulated hanging scene where they put a hood over you and put you on a little platform and you think you're going to be hung. And it's happening at Dorney. This is happening at Dorney Park, which is a Cedar Fair family-friendly amusement park. And this is happening there. And that's something people don't realize, that this stuff is happening at major conglomerate-run attractions.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, at the same time, you're agreeing to this experience, and it is what it is. And at the same time, but there are places, at least I've been to in this area, have always put the customer safety as extreme attention. I know even in this area here, every single place we've gone to has been safety is always paramount.
And my last question for you, you mentioned Horror Hall before, and I know that this year they had added an escape room, so to speak. Are there any cool additions that you've seen throughout NEPA?
I will say that escape rooms is something I never really truly enjoyed personally. I never found an escape room, in my opinion.
Well, just in general.
Yeah, general.
A haunted house in general.
Every single year, each attraction tries to outdo its previous year.
Right.
Horror Hall's escape room is something separate from the haunted attraction. Its traditional haunted show is basically the same. Broken Hearts and Sound, for example, which is in Dallas, is a great haunted attraction, but it really is the same core show. In terms of massive improvements this year in this area here alone, a lot of shows are focused on basically honing down and perfecting their shows. There's not any massive changes in terms of build design. Even Reaper's Revenge, for example, they still have their core attractions, and they've just tried to improve each one and add different styles to them. I'm trying to think of massive change. The most places that really have had any massive changes that have in this area, or at least the 2 hours, probably go back to a place called the Halls of Horror, which is in Palmerton, which really changes the show almost completely every single season. But really, in the past, it seems as though every place is on like a 3 or 4 year cycle, where they will have their a major build year, and they will go for broke basically. Then they'll try to hone that show down to a point where it's a point of perfection. And I think that's where we're at now in the last year of the cycle versus another build year. And some of these haunted attractions, they'll take 90 minutes to complete, and the owner has to sit back and think, well, how do we have to add any more to it in terms of build-wise versus in tweaking the show or adding new scenes to it and trying to improve. And really that's and some haunts have been the same for the past 20-some years. Some places are frozen in time and still provide a great show and it's fun, but perhaps they're starting to kind of die off in terms of quality. Even some of the local haunts are sort of starting to, when we visit them, have seen less numbers than usual based on, I think, because the prices are going up in these haunted attractions.
Why do you think that is? Expenses?
Well, there's expenses, plus there's also perception that they're going to do a quality show that you're going to have to pay for it.
Right. But if they're the same year over year, what would...
well, it's hard to say. It's not really the same. Maybe I misspoken. You're going to see shows that are different in terms of quality, in terms of acting, in terms of seeing... You may see more actors in 1 year. And that's a huge increase in terms of places that pay their actors. And the haunts that do increase their price, you're going to see, for example, if you go to a haunt attraction, maybe the same style haunt attraction was last year, but it's built differently in terms of execution. And that's something that sometimes people don't realize or seem to forget. I'll use examples. Say, for example, it's Horror Hall or Sector 13 again, which is Reaper's Revenge. But the inside of the attraction is totally revamped. Or you're looking at a more personal experience or some new things that do cost extensively a lot of money. I also think that the increase in price is sort of reflects the notion that they do want to grow. And some of these haunted attractions are to the point where they have to increase prices to, because nothing is cheap in the haunted industry for the most part.
Yeah, so if it goes up in price, just relax. It's going to be better for next year.
In the future, and you're also building towards. And it's not really a money grab for these places. They are, they're putting everything back into the haunt.
Yeah, well, like Horror Hall, for instance, we touched on this before. Horror Hall, that is essentially, well, not essentially, it is a fundraiser for the volunteer fire department in Plymouth. So all those dollars that they spend thousands in advertising, whatever it costs for actors and props and all that kind of stuff. Whatever they make off that event goes towards the fire hall. So I mean that's. We mentioned earlier today.
Yeah, there's money that goes back to the people for good causes, and at the same time, there's money that goes back to a show.
So yeah, I mean,
and as haunts grow, the expenses grow. Right. I'll go back to Reaper's Revenge, for example. That haunt has only 9 years old. It really is relatively young compared to what many haunt attractions are. And if you actually go into what has gone or taken place over there, have had power lines run into the campus itself. It's become almost like a mini city that functions up on the mountain. And all that stuff may not be seen by people, or they've built a giant makeup facility, FX facility, which is not just a tent anymore, which was what it was when it started. That costs a lot of money, and that reflects the cost design based implemented that you're paying at the ticket price. And also, again, if you're paying $45 a night, you're expecting a great show that's going to last 90 minutes, and you're expecting that, and they strive to accomplish that. Now, some places do try to, and I'll be blunt, they do try to not really rip people off and provide a show that's less than stellar. And really around this area here, that's not really truly the case. Some places, again, are very old school, have not changed, like, for example, Dracula's Forest and Clark Summit. But at the same time, you'll enjoy yourself. And, yes, it's only $15 for the hayride. And there's additional walkthrough, which I really can't recommend too much. But it's still the same show you remember as a kid. And it's kind of the traditional aspect that people always go, it's like a tradition. Everyone goes to that haunted attraction, gets to see it, and nothing has really changed. And there's an enjoyment factor in that, but also when I see that same thing over and over again, you wonder sometimes, well, why can't these people get to the next level? Or why can't they do something different that really shocks the industry again, or shocks the area that they did maybe 10 years ago, and it kind of sometimes is frustrating. See what haunted attractions could be sometimes versus what they currently are, and the complacency is frustrating as someone who goes to visit these places. I'll go back to Circle of Screams up at Route 6 there in Dixon City. That place went from the worst place in the world to some place that is respectable and provides a different show every single year. And I should say their show this year is completely different than it was last year and the years before. So that truly is a completely different show than it was in previous years. Because it's something everybody like, maybe not. There's theatrics, there's aspects of a traditional haunt, and it's very entertaining. And sometimes they even get borderline mature in terms of their acting. They have talented actors, talented staff, but they have really turned themselves around over the past 2 years in terms of they're in a phenomenal location too, but that's a whole other side story we can go into another day.
There is some questions. Again, the beer's going right through me.
I thought that was funny. Russell Austin, who you've probably seen on our live streams and our events many times, he said, "How much more do I have to pay to get someone to touch me?"
Well, there's a place down the road. It's $35. It's called the Blood Experience.
There you go.
At the Halls of Horror in Palmerton, you'll be touched. You'll be pinned against walls. You'll be soaked in blood when you leave, and you'll get goggles to remember. And plus, the blood comes off with a baby wipe, so you'll be touched very in any way you want. And you might meet a character called Uncle Touchy, who is more than touchy in terms of his style of scaring. You might get offended a little bit for those who are easily offended, but you will be touched, and you'll be forced to feel fear. They will not let you out.
Speaking of which, Eric Stroll says...
There's Uncle Touchy.
Does Uncle Touchy make you uncomfortable, Joe?
Uncle Touchy will make anyone feel uncomfortable. He's probably one of the... I've seen lots of homemade characters in past 4 or 5 years I've done this, and this character is one of the most disturbing characters in a haunted attraction you'll ever see. But he's funny. It's like a mix between Captain Spaulding and someone you don't want to meet. And Uncle Touchy is in the Tickle Room. Mm-hmm. is quite the highlight of this season in terms of characters you'll see that are custom made. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you see custom made characters people bring to life that are just cheesy or just totally ridiculous. You won't see that in the Halls of Horror. These characters are real life terrorizing people. So,
not to be confused with Uncle Touchy's massage parlor, which is
right
down the road here in Wilkes-Barre.
There's
totally different place.
Uncle Touchy will not massage you.
Just got back.
Uncle Touchy will not massage you.
Quick and easy.
And Eric does play Uncle Touchy in the Halls of Horror.
So let's close with this. What do you see as the future for these haunted attractions? Where do you think the trends are going?
It appears as though that the escape rooms are really becoming very popular, and the more personal experiences where people get to, whether it be through an escape room where they have to get maybe a time limit to solve a problem, or get into a personal experience. That seems to be the prevailing trend that the haunts are going into. In my opinion, that's the case. If you go to a place like a Cedar Fair operated haunt like Dorney Park, and people are paying an exorbitant amount of money to get like a personal experience, even if they're not really the best sometimes because it's still Dorney Park. They have up and down seasons there. People are still paying for a one-on-one experience, and this is happening at nicely at Dorney Park, at a national conglomerate corporation that kind of indicates the industry is going in that direction. Because I've seen people last year. Dorney Park had people you had to eat bugs. And live insects, you had to eat them based on one that if you chose to, at Dorney Park. And I never expect that in any time going to Dorney Park in a family-friendly place, and you're seeing that.
Fear factor?
Yeah, right.
That's part of the witch who fed you as maggots. You had a choice to eat maggots and crickets, but
Jeez.
Or hanging scene at Dorney Park. That's the thing the industry is moving to. Excuse me, more of a personal experience. And now how's it profitable in terms of bringing in 1,000 people a night? That's another story. But I think the haunts are trying to at least find ways to make money off that sector as a part of their larger shows, either through operating escape rooms or operating personal experiences or special events. A lot of haunts next week are operating what's called blackout nights, where they're basically telling you this is a more darker, intense show, and trying to get the adult crowd to come in and to see that show over that night, and basically find another way to make money off of the more core horror audience. And that seems to be the case. That's picking up across national and local haunts. And 2 weeks from now, the Legendary Haunt Tour comes to Northeastern Pennsylvania, which is one of the premier industry events, and there's an extreme show attached to that, where people are getting to see more of an extreme. You may get abducted from a hayride, or forced to complete tasks by yourself or in a small group, away from your giant group of 6 people. That seems to be the push in terms of. That started off kind of in the local scene, the small scene, that these haunts were trying to operate immersive horror shows where they're a small group of people are getting to experience things that maybe perhaps you might see in a movie. But now the big corporations are taking notice of that, and the bigger haunts are seeing that and trying to build that part into their shows. And that's happening, it seems to be more and more each year. Again, there's always a good place for traditional haunt, and then also a place people get to go. But haunts are trying to become more of something for everybody, and try to cater to every single, and try to make as much money as possible based on what they're trying to offer in that evening.
Well, this has definitely been an enlightening conversation, and I hope that you guys got something out of that and understand, what you're getting yourselves into if you're going to one of these events. And to echo what he said before, good luck this weekend trying to get into these places, and don't take it too hard if you have to wait a couple hours and things like that. Come prepared. Bring some snacks or something to do and hang out.
A lot of these places do have a lot of food options. We might have that too, but at the same time, this weekend is going to be a very packed weekend. I know a lot of people are working very hard to make their show the best possible. And Northeastern Pennsylvania is starting to get highlighted for its work in horror and haunted entertainment, and I think it's far time that's the case.
And I don't encourage drinking and haunted hayriding, whatever, but you can get a fine crowler from Beer Boys.
Yeah. And put that right in your hoodie as you're waiting in line.
As you're waiting in line, But this last beer that we had is the Penn Pumpkin Roll, and 6%. And I think this has more of the cinnamon pumpkin spice.
Yes. This is
more
definitely more of the dessert kind of flavor.
Yeah.
Whereas these were kind of heavier. This is definitely much lighter, and definitely has that dessert element to it. It really does taste like a pumpkin roll.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's awesome.
Beer Boys, North Washington Street. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Hope have a safe and fun Halloween. On Halloween itself, which happens to be a Tuesday, we're going to be at our open mic at the V-Spot. So please come hang out with us and dress up if you're coming. Whether you're participating or just hanging out and having a couple of drinks, please come and dress up in your favorite costume. We're going to come up with some kind of prize to give away that Tuesday. Maybe some tickets, maybe something else. But whoever has the best costume, we're definitely going to give them something.
Well, maybe tickets to the Bleachers show at
Yeah.
the FM Kirby Center next Thursday, a week tomorrow.
Good plug.
I'll plug this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bleachers. Bleachers. The guy from that band was actually in Fun. If you didn't know that.
Yes.
And he'll be with Mr. Wives, Bishop Briggs, Welshly Arms. Sorry. And we just added the Struts. We'll be doing
that's awesome.
an acoustic performance outside of the venue. That if you have a ticket to the show, just come on in and.
Didn't they sell out the place, or at least pack the
They
place?
did.
Last time they were at the
year or
Kirby.
two. Yeah, there was like 500 people in that lobby. So
Yeah.
that's a great band. Or is that? Are we confusing that with
Yeah, there was a band after that, but I think
Saint Motel?
I know the Struts did really well there.
But the
too.
Struts also do very well in our radio theater too. But
Cool.
next Thursday, Kirby Center, Bleachers, Alt 92.1. Get there. Do it.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
you.